welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ariana Jasmine, and today we will be talking about whether China and Israel has a good relationship or not. If that it's just a trade relationship, if they have a good standing relationship, if they agree with each other's governments, and etc. So make sure you like, subscribe, and comment, and let's get into it. A Chinese embassy spokesperson in July expressed confidence that Beijing was ready to play a positive role in promoting peace talks between Israel and Palestinians. The previous month, Chinese President Xi Jinping welcomed Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas to Beijing and invited Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu to visit. Okay. So they're trying to take like a Switzerland role. They're trying to be like, okay, let's all be cool kind of thing. Beijing has sent its Middle East envoy, I'm not even going to try to say that name, but neither Xi nor his foreign minister Wang Yi have visited the region since the outbreak of the fighting. Xi has called for a ceasefire, while Wang has said that the source of the conflict lies in the fact that justice has not been done to Palestinian people and that the collective punishment of Palestinians must come to an end. Okay, I don't think they're that close with Israel. Because countries like America, Britain, the NATO ally and Western ally countries flew out to Israel like immediately. Their Middle East envoy is not only calling for a ceasefire, but also telling people that this is collective punishment. Something that most world leaders refrain from doing. Such statements follow as the basic Chinese playbook when conflicts outbreak between Israelis and Palestinians, according to William Figueroa, a university professor. They take a very cautious stance initially and then call for peace and condemn violence against citizens while primarily focusing on Palestinian grievances. Yeah, y'all, I don't know. I'm not convinced they're fully like buddy-buddy with Israel. I'm not convinced they have a very great relationship with Israel. Now, listen, trading and relationship is two separate things, right? The relationship between America and China is fucked up, right? But there's still a lot of trading going on because economically they still depend on each other. It could be the same thing. It could be where they're trading with Israel, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have a good relationship. Like, are y'all actually close? Are y'all cool? That's a whole other conversation. Yeah, but playing it cool is different though. Because if they were just playing it cool, they would have sided with Israel. They're not playing it cool. They're straight up saying that this was collective punishment. Like, that's a pretty big deal for a country's envoy to say that. That seems based since the start of this whole stuff might have changed, so that's awesome if they were actively working to end the genocide. I don't know if they were actively working to end the genocide, but they do seem to side with Palestinians, which I think is cool. In the immediate aftermath of Hamas's attack on Israel, the Chinese government was accused of responding in only vague terms and adopting a non-committal tone. They took kind of a wait-and-see attitude at first. The Chinese Foreign Ministry called for calm to exercise of restraint and refrained from condemning Hamas. Beijing has traditionally prioritized relationships with Palestinians in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That's interesting. Beijing considered the Palestinian struggle for land to be a part of the world's national liberation movement, according to Hongge Fan, a professor at the Middle East Studies Institution of Shanghai International Studies University. The understanding of Palestinian question is still largely stems from its perception. In 1965, the Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO) was allowed to open a diplomatic mission in China and upgraded to an embassy in 1974. Beijing was probably the PLO's primary supplier of weapons for a time in the 1960s and 1970s, according to the Beirut-based Institute for Palestine Studies, and has recognized the state of Palestine since 1988. Wait, what the hell? I didn't know that. However, China has also expanded its ties with Israel. China established full diplomatic relations with Israel in 1992. Okay, so that's much later. We're talking about like almost a decade later. And has since invested billions in its economy. The investments in the Palestinian territories have been negligible in comparison. But Chinese investments in Israel are in turn dwarfed by its economic relationship with Saudi Arabia. China has invested heavily in Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf countries. That is very true. That is extremely true. So China has heavily invested in Africa. They've invested in different Middle Eastern regions. It's not just Israel. Like, they've been investing a ton. I know for a fact Iran has a great relationship with China. Like, China spent billions of dollars on Iranian infrastructure not even that long ago. Beijing and Riyadh, I hope I said that right, announced investment deals worth 10 billion in June. Trade between the two reached to 106 billion in 2022, almost double the value of Saudi Arabian US trade. China is also the primary buyer of Saudi Arabian and Iranian oil. This is part of the larger development, which has seen China become the Arab world's main trading partner. So the relationship is clearly complicated. They supported PLO, but then once PLO kind of faded away and Hamas started gaining foot, right? They started investing more in Israel. But then they've been investing more in a lot of other countries, and they're not taking a complete stance in support of Israel. So this is very interesting. So when it became clear that what was going to be a strong outcry from these countries following the Israeli military operations in Gaza, the Chinese rhetoric became much more clearly pro-Palestinian. Subsequently, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang accused Israel of going beyond self-defense and military actions in Gaza, opposing the U.S. This has placed the Chinese government at odds with the U.S. Oh my God. The plot thickens. While there has been an absence of Chinese diplomatic leadership in the conflict, according to analysis, China has been more outspoken in its criticism of Washington, even as the two countries try to rebuild a severely strained relationship. I mean, is America really trying to rebuild a relationship, though? I'm not really convinced. In an editorial in the government-controlled China Daily, the newspaper accused the U.S. of adding fuel to the fire by blindly backing Israel in the ongoing conflict. The state... Oh, wow. So, that's so interesting. So, America's blind support of the Israeli government has further strained the relationship between China and America. I didn't even think of that being a thing. Like, the more you know. The state-run Global Times said in its own editorial that the U.S. was stained with the blood of innocent civilians after the U.S. on October 18 vetoed the United Nations Security Council resolution drafted by Brazil calling for a humanitarian pause in the conflict due to allow aid into Gaza. So that was one of the many resolutions that America vetoed. I think they vetoed more than 3 at this point. On October 27, a resolution put before the UN General Assembly drafted by Jordan received support from 120 countries. The U.S. voted against it while China voted in favor. Before that, China, along with Russia, vetoed a U.S. drafted resolution that stated Israel's right to defend itself and demanded Iran stop exporting arms to hardline groups. So it seems like overall, China tends to lean more towards supporting Palestine. While in the past they have shown to also financially invest in Israel. See, this is my main point. This is the point I was trying to make to y'all. Trading and relationship is 2 separate things. You can trade with a country, but that doesn't mean that you are friends with that country. You can hate each other, but you can still trade for economic benefit, which is kind of the vibe I'm getting here. Like, yeah, they trade with Israel, they invest in Israel, but they don't politically really agree with anything Israel does or America, right? And they stood with Russia to veto the U.S. draft resolution, which also shows you a lot on where they stand with this, right? Like, if push comes to shove and this turns into a World War III, hypothetically, am I convinced that China would stand with Israel and America? No, I'm not, right? I'm more convinced that China would stand with Iran, Russia, North Korea, Venezuela, the opposition, like the opposite of the Western allies. But does that mean they're going to stop trading and having an economic relationship? No. See, this is why politics is complicated. There's a difference between a business relationship and an allyship. Absolutely. That is so nicely put. We live in a capitalist world, baby. If these countries can make money, they're going to make it. Doesn't mean they like you. They just want to make their money. Laying out China's plans for November, Zhang said the council's performance was not as good as what the global community expects, and that every effort would be made to guide it towards concrete plans in promoting political settlements. To make it more specific, the top priority this month is to tackle the Israel-Palestine, namely Gaza, conflict that is going on. On Monday, at the request of China and the United Arab Emirates, the 15-member body will hold more closed-door deliberations on the conflict. The best-case scenario for China would be for the fighting to end as soon as possible and for China to be involved in any potential negotiation process along the way. But I am not sure they will be able to get involved at all, quite frankly. See, China's relationship is so complicated when it comes to foreign policy and foreign relationships because they'll trade with so many countries, but that doesn't mean they have a good relationship with those countries or they fundamentally agree with that country's government. They do whatever will monetarily benefit them, which is why I also get mad when people claim that China is communist, because you're not a communist country if you're so capitalist with your trading. At the end of the day, do they disagree with the way that the Israeli government has been dealing with what has been going on in the Middle East? Obviously, yes, they do. They don't agree with it, right? They disagree. But at the end of the day, will they also stop themselves from trading and or making money from Israel? No. They won't. And since the whole entire global economy, quite frankly, depends on China, yeah, everyone's going to hate China. But does that mean people are going to say like, ew, no, I'm not going to make money from you by trading? No. Which makes there's so many layers to this relationship because everyone is so dependent on China. But at the same time, like, do people like China? No. Not people. When I speak about people, I mean governments, right? You wouldn't invite a customer over to your place and watch the game and call them a friend. Exactly. 100%. You guys catch my drift. All right, in claiming neutrality, China picks a side in the Israel-Hamas war. So this is Axios. This is like a Western newspaper. Beijing is trying to use the outbreak of violence between Israel and Hamas to curry favor among Arab states and gain their support for China's global agenda. Oh, geez, damn. What a Western way of writing an article. Why it matters, the Chinese government is seeking to legitimize authoritarian practices and erode human rights protections on the international stage. What? China is trying to promote alternative norms in global politics, and China sees Arab states as a natural constituency for China to try to attract. By appealing to Arab countries, they'll get more support for the reforms that they want to push through the international system. Okay, that I can understand because they are trying to invest billions of dollars in different countries to like infrastructurally build certain things that they want, like certain goals that they want to hit. So I can kind of understand that point. What's happening? China's foreign ministry condemned the violence against civilians in the Israel-Hamas war, but did not denounce Hamas by name. China's immediate statements after the attack, which included calling for an independent state of Palestine, disappointed Israeli officials. Okay, so these are two very Zionist takes. When people are being murdered, slaughtered in the streets, this is not the time to call for a two-state solution, said the Israeli official. Okay, I've literally never listened to anything an Israeli official has ever said, so we're going to skip on to the next one. By not condemning Hamas, China is looking to score points with Arab countries. I don't understand though, like why would China have to score points with Arab countries? Like, I don't think China fundamentally needs to do that for money. I think they're doing pretty well with or without that. Meanwhile, commentary in Chinese state media and heavily censored social media platforms has blamed U.S. involvement in the Middle East as the underlying cause of the violence gripping Israel and Gaza after Hamas's deadly attack over the weekend. I mean, that is true. Not that I'm siding with Chinese government. I don't like any government. I've made that very clear in my videos. But U.S. involvement in the Middle East has caused a lot of drama in the past 3 decades. In this specific situation, 50-ish years. So I don't really like this article. This article is very... Oh, you want to know why? Guys, this article was published in October 15. This was like days after the initial Hamas attack. That makes a lot more sense. They're trying to portray themselves as neutral, but it's very clear what they stand on. I mean, China has never really been neutral, so. Do you guys see this stark difference between the coverage of Al Jazeera and Axios? That's wild. Like, I fundamentally didn't learn anything from this article, but like the Al Jazeera article painted everything so well, which is why I'm an Al Jazeera stan. That is why I get a lot of my Middle East news from Al Jazeera, because they never miss when it comes to Middle East news. Now, with that being said, Al Jazeera is partially funded by the Qatar government, so you do kind of have to be careful. Obviously, read with a grain of salt. But when it comes to like trustworthy news, websites like Al Jazeera, Middle East Eye, websites that truly like really specialize in Middle East coverage is so important, because then you'll read a Western lens article like this and it'll just leave you all confused. You know what I mean? Thank you so much for watching my analysis video. My name is Ariana Jasmine. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back with more videos like these.